Hello and welcome back to the Failed Breakdown channel. It's Monday, December 15th, and we're going to be looking at failed breakdown of the 68.15/19 level that occurred about an hour after the open. Kind of interesting because there's two levels in close proximity and maybe at least three different ways to trade this. I think all of them equally valid. I'll also touch very briefly on a couple of setups that happened on Sunday night. Just a reminder, I'm not an expert. I'm learning like a lot of others here, so take what I say with a pinch of salt. And if Adam says something different in his recap in the newsletter coming out after this video, then I stand corrected. So always defer to him. Highly recommend you all subscribe. Okay, let's get into the charts. Okay, so here we are. This is the 4-hour chart, actually looking at the end of the day on Monday, about half an hour before the close. So as you can see, we're still just working this range we've been in, 68.15 to 69.10. Just been going sideways in that and now starting to fill out this megaphone to the downside a little bit. We had an active failed breakdown on Friday of the 68.17 level, 17 or 18, so that was active into Sunday morning. Sunday we dipped, put in a failed breakdown of 68.25, couldn't test Friday's low, recovered 25. Personally I didn't trade that, but there was an option to get in there. I took the recovery of 68.38, which was the kind of inner range support there, and then Sunday evening we kind of pushed up into right smack bang middle of the range, right up here. Before getting a dip, like decent sell off the close, off the open Monday morning. So let's switch over to the 15-minute and take a quick look. Okay, so here we are. This is showing Sunday's open right here. So right off the open, we pushed up, test 38, dipped, flushed under 68.25. I was kind of eyeing this 68.15 and wasn't really, I suppose, mentally prepared to take the 68.25, but we got a nice bit of type 2 acceptance in here. If we zoomed in, there's a smaller time frame, we'd see that kind of pattern formation, push up back through, dip to it, and then lift off. So there was definitely a nice entry in there. I just wasn't really mentally prepared to take it, I suppose. I'd sort of already passed on that trade before it's set up, but a little lesson there for me in terms of not picking and choosing trades, just taking the first one that sets up. I ended up taking the reclaim of 68.38 when we pushed back up through. We talked about this in the pre-market prep this morning, but a lot of nice acceptance going on here of the first type, and then when we pushed up through, a nice little dip of type 2, and there was an entry in there, and that ran us up into the morning, Monday morning, where we got this nice big sell-off that was a decent rate. It seemed relatively low volume to me. Maybe that's partly due to the ongoing rollover week. Maybe distorts things a little bit. But it was definitely a dramatic sell. We dipped 70 points almost. 70 points in an hour, so more than a point a minute before putting in a failed breakdown. And then we had these two levels to trade off. You could either trade the 68.15, which was the low from Friday afternoon, or the 68.19-ish, 18.75, I'll call it 19, from Sunday's open. No wrong way to play it. I suppose the more conservative approach is to wait for the recovery of the 19, but the 15 is probably the more significant low, being that it was set during regular trading hours. So obviously a lot more volume going on when that low was set, and we'll see that when we run through and replay. When we get down to this level, we get a pretty substantial volume spike around here that lifts us back up and gives us our entry. But we've kind of got a combination of two different levels, and then we'll see when we do the replay that kind of both types of acceptance happening around the different levels. So at least three different ways to trade that, and they all ran for multiple levels. So another day, another successful failed breakdown. Okay, let me switch platforms and we'll get a bit down into the nitty gritty. Okay, so here we are in replay mode, it's 10:20 Eastern time, so about 50 minutes after the open. Got it playing at about 2 times speed. So you can see here clearly on the 15-minute chart, we've been selling quite dramatically. I was initially watching the 38 and 42 level to see if there was going to be a potential failed breakdown of the overnight lows or the London session low. And we kind of looked like it was setting up here with this flush under 38, an attempt to recover, but it never got above 38, and 42 would have been the trigger for that one. So kind of stand down on that initial entry and just watch for lower to see what's going to happen as we get down to some of these lower levels. So with 15 and 18.5 or 19 being obviously only 4 points, there's really not a trim that you can have in those. If you trade 15, you really can't trim before you get to the next level up, which was obviously the Sunday evening low. So I think I am put some good commentary in the Discord on that, and I totally agree that if you can't get your first trim before that higher level, which itself is a significant low, then the preference for us is to wait for that higher level to reclaim. Adam may have traded something differently. We'll find out in the newsletter tonight. But they're both options, so you just got to pick your poison. Really, you want to get in lower with perhaps a better R&R because your stop isn't so large, your structural stop, or do you want to be maybe a bit more conservative in terms of sort of waiting for confirmation and waiting for it to reclaim the higher level? Also got the danger zone marked out in here on the 18 level, 5 points above the 18. And we'll see how that comes into play. It looked like it was going to set up for type 3 acceptance, but then it quickly became apparent that it didn't, so we just sort of flipped back to type 2 at that point when we're recovering the 19. But we'll see that as we get into the various different phases of acceptance that occurred around each level. So I think the first thing that occurred here, we got the flush under 15, and we start to put in a cycle of type 1 acceptance. You can see on both the 15-minute and the range chart, obviously we've only dipped by a few points at this moment, maybe 5 points. And then I think, if my memory serves, we come back up and then dip again and then come back up. So putting in that kind of first cycle of type 1 acceptance. Let me run it a little bit faster. Just running at about 4 times speed. At some point here, we did get a huge spike in volume. I can't remember exactly where that happened. Maybe it's already occurred, but I mean, just keep an eye on the ticks. These are running pretty reasonably well now, but it does, I want to say it spiked up to like 2000 at some point here. So there we go, we've dipped to 07, so an 8-point flush, shallow flush. We've returned to the level, dipping again. So this is the first potential entry on the 15 level where we come back up and push through this with some decent momentum. And obviously we're threatening the prior day's low here at 68.05, which would have been a nice sweep if we could have gotten that, but that never happened. So sellers have tried to run it lower and failed. They couldn't flush the prior day's low. So right when we push through here, it's going to be the first kind of valid entry trigger coinciding with the down channel, the break of that. So yeah, you could have got in on that pop up through. For me, I chose to wait for the 18/19 level, and as we're poking through here, I believe we get to the top of the danger zone. So I started a timer on my phone right about here to see if we were going to get a couple of minutes above. But as Adams tweeted recently, with that third type of acceptance, it's not staying above the level, it's staying at the top of the danger zone. So at this point, that type 3 acceptance has been invalidated, and we can defer to type 2, and there was a quick little swing of that right there. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. Did get a swing of that as we first pushed through and bounced. So there was potentially an entry there for using type 2 acceptance off of the 18 level. And then we get another swing of it here, which is where I got in, but then it dipped even further after that. So I had a bit of drawdown on this trade, which is never ideal. Generally much prefer type 2 acceptance where it flushes the level and comes back through it. Just a preference. It's just sort of gives me a better way of gauging it rather than trying to hope it bounces at this point. So I much prefer to see this kind of action and then getting in at this point. I got in somewhere around here and I didn't have a very good entry. I was up at 24 was my entry, which meant I had to definitely suffer quite a bit of drawdown in the next swing because there was sort of another cycle of type 2 acceptance here. I'm pretty sure it breaks this low and gets down to 10-ish. But for me, you know, I'd entered 24, but my stop's below the lowest low. So big stop on that one, sizing down to, you know, to account for that. And then we push up from here. So obviously if you were trading the 19, this would be in the better level here. But you can also see at this point, you know, this entry here is also like a valid type 2 acceptance on the 15 level. So we've kind of had 3 entries. We've had our first type 1 acceptance entry here on the 15. We've had a type 2 entry here on the 18. And then I think you can argue, I'll just change color, that, you know, this swing is a type 2 acceptance of the 15 level as well, getting, you know, a perfect retest of 15 before shooting straight up. So many different ways to play that. You know, the one thing we didn't get was type 3 acceptance, really. I suppose maybe there's type 3 acceptance of the 15 level, but different options, different ways to play it. Run multiple levels. I think it got, where did it get back up to? It got back above 38 momentarily before failing. So yeah, we did tag the overnight low at 42 here before coming back down, and then it's just been chopping all day ever since, right around 68.25. So nothing to do for the rest of the day. Run a stop still below the lowest low, but really I think everyone at this point is eyeing that 68.05 and then the 68.02 sweeps as well. If we can get that, those will both be nice trades to look forward to. So that's it for this one. We'll catch you in the next one. Bye.